And we're going to go to January minutes, and any discussion on January minutes? Anyone have additions? Yes, Judge Anderson.
Good morning. I just wanted to make sure that my last name was in the minutes. It just says Marcin, and while I'd like to be known by only my first name like Madonna, I think officially you should probably put my last name in there too.
Thank you, Judge Anderson.
Yes, thank you. And I'm here on behalf of the District Municipal Court Judges Association. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make that correction. Anyone else? All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, Judge Bradley, move. Second.
Second.
Second, Sal, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? All right, it's adopted unanimously. Sal, can you introduce the Criminal Justice Equity Tool group that are presenting to us?
Oh man, Francis, talking about putting me on the spot. Yes, here's the introduction. Because my only connection to this group, which was a phenomenal group, and group, let me know that I was the one who said this board should really hear from you. I'm the liaison to the Gender and Justice Commission, where I heard your presentation. And I was so blown away that I said to our board, we should hear from you. So for all of you on the Zoom call, let me just tell you, I was really just so impressed by this group and so excited about their work. And so I'm very happy to see that they're going to be presenting to us today. How's that for an introduction? That's what I'm going to do on my 10-second warning. By Francis, I'm going to get you back for this, my brother.
Thank you. Kim Godin, Kate Sigafos, and Anthony Powers. I probably mispronounced your last name, Kate. I'm sorry.
You got it.
Anthony Powers are going to be presenting. There you go. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be a part of this project. I have been a criminal defense lawyer in Washington State for over 25 years, and I am a member of the Washington State Sentencing Guidelines Commission. And this project is near and dear to me in both roles that I serve. Because in both roles, what we know is that there is so much that we can learn about equity and whether we are accomplishing that by looking at data. And we have these conversations all the time in the Sentencing Guidelines Commission where we say, what is the data on this? What are the numbers? And we find out that they haven't, we can't access them, especially easily. And then we say there ought to be a program like this, a tool like this. And then we talk about how hard it is to make the different silos of data talk to each other, how there are 39 different counties, how judges and lawyers have really bad handwriting, there isn't government funding, and the conversation dies out. So when Anthony Powers contacted me this summer to say, I'd like to work on this project, I was excited to be a legal advisor for him. And then I also thought, well, this is kind of going to go the way of the other conversations. No, 4 days later, he contacted me again to say Microsoft is on board and they are excited. And what we're going to show you then is what we have been able to accomplish with Microsoft after about 4 days of work in a hackathon. And what you are seeing right now is the tip of the iceberg, because it is what we have been able to accomplish in that time with one silo of data. And that is 20 years of sentencing data that is kept by the Caseload Forecast Council. And what we have been limited by so far are the data points that they keep and track. But as I said, this is just the beginning. We are in talks with prosecutors' offices, with the administrative office of the courts, with the Department of Corrections, just to name a few. And our goal is to eventually be able to access data from all points in the life of a criminal case and make that data available to the public, to policymakers, to legislators, to you, through a filterable tool that you can access online. So with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Anthony Powers so he can introduce himself and talk a little bit more about the project. Anthony, you're on mute.
Oh, I clicked unmute and I thought it didn't go off apparently. Good morning, everybody. I was just saying that it's good to see a lot of familiar faces and some unfamiliar faces. Ironically enough, Francis Adewale, I'm not exactly sure if I pronounced your name right, but I was just responding to an email that you're in the email chain with Carmen. So, but when a lot of people in different spheres come together on different projects, we can accomplish a lot more. And similar to how we saw with COVID brought to light something that we hadn't realized as a society, right? And that is we can work remotely, you know, because we just like phased in like naturally with the computer and technology era. But now you see a lot of companies are saying you can work from home even after, you know, COVID-19 goes away. Then a lot of people don't have to go back to work. They can just work from home and it'll still be just as productive. So one of the things that we saw with this data is that a lot of the stuff is antiquated as far as how records are kept and how information is gathered. So we're hoping to not only build out the system that you're about to see, but to create a better approach into how data is collected in our state and throughout the country, because we plan on making this a national project and have transparency and a fair system for everybody. Okay.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kate Sigafus, and hello, Diana Singleton. Sorry, you all, like we're on each other's holiday card list. We're like that close, like our babies have grown up together. So hi, Diana. My name is Kate, and I am currently an employment lawyer at Microsoft. But in my past life, I was a criminal prosecutor in Washington State and also a pro tem judge in district and municipal courts. So I have been an employment lawyer for Microsoft for a few years, and the way this came to us was through Anthony. Anthony was presenting using his work in the Seattle Clemency Project to Microsoft for some pro bono activity. He mentioned offhand, I have a pile of data I collected, and somebody in that meeting said, oh, data, Microsoft can do data. So Jacqueline Krohn started this through and brought it into Microsoft through the hackathon project. The hackathon is basically 4 days in July where Microsoft says, hey, you got an issue? Is there anything we can do to help? We don't pretend to know the subject matter, right? But it's if you have a pile of data, we can help you organize it. So there was a team of probably at the time around, I don't know, 20 to 30 people. And it broke down in 3 categories. There was sort of a funding piece, a legislative piece, and then the tool building piece. And we've got people on this call who are parts of all sorts of that. We've got PMs and the data folks on this call as well. So what we have here is you're seeing sort of the data piece, the tool piece of this. After 3 days, on the 3rd day, we got the caseload forecast data, the 20 years worth of adult sentencing data, input that, and sort of this is what we've had since. Currently, we're working forward. Anthony has actually started a separate nonprofit to house this tool. So we're currently working on getting data share agreements with the various agencies who hold this data with the nonprofit. So we're sort of at that point in the data collection steps. But I will start sharing my screen. Oh, whoever's the host, can you, I'm sorry, can you let me share screen? I'll keep trying. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Whoever magically made that happen. All righty. So this is our public equity and justice access, or excuse me, public equity and justice system tool. And it's run in our Microsoft Power BI stuff. And this currently lives in Microsoft land. That's why I have to show it to you and Anthony can't, because it hasn't been moved out of the systems until those data share agreements get put in place. It can't really, but here we are. And so the first couple of pages are really the mission. Like the whole point of this tool is to bring equity and accountability as best we can to the criminal justice system. You know, shares the data sources, things like that. The second tab is really just like a how to use this, right? Like there are some parameters and our data folks are, you know, happy to answer questions about that. But, you know, we've filtered out some outlier cases. The data we have currently, kind of a clear example of some of the limitations right now are that the only enhancements that we had in the caseload forecast data were we only had child under 16 as a victim in sexual motivation. But for example, we don't have firearm enhancement data in this. So if you're using this tool and you click on enhancements, it's helpful to know that firearm enhancements aren't included, because I'm assuming that would be something that people would want to know and be looking at and filter by. So it has some parameters, you know, basic definitions, the ways, you know, we sort of looked at things here. And then from there, there's three big chunks. There's a conviction chunk. That's a technical term, by the way. Sentencing pieces, and then the case drill down piece. So when we're in the convictions tabs, it's all the same data, just looked at different ways. When we're in the sentencing tabs, it's all the same data, again, just looked at different ways. So with respect to the convictions areas, what we have here in these two tabs is that caseload forecast data. So the adult sentencing, or the adult felony sentencing data for 20 years, we have that overlaid with the Washington census data. So we have two piles in these tabs. And what these are really looking at is trying to identify if there is any disproportionality. Again, Microsoft's not telling anybody what that means, right? That's for the experts to sort of figure out. But what we can do is say, this is what the numbers say, and this is how, ways to look at it. So in the tool, you can sort by year, and this tab has it, the visual is so that various races are across the bottom and percentage of convictions based on that race run along the side. Now, because this is overlaid with Washington census data, Latinx isn't pulled out. Latinx goes in other per the census data we have. So, you know, we've had lots of discussions about some of the limitations here and the ways, you know, all of like Hispanic, Latinx being a race versus an ethnicity and the way it's identified in various spaces. We're having all those discussions all the time about some of those, you know, limitations. But just so you guys know, it's not that we forgot it, it's that it's not in the census data. You can also search by county here. And these are, again, just different ways of looking at the data. You know, you can just look at the charts across the board. Here's percentage of convictions of a population. Here's percentage of the population made up in that year based on the data we have. If you want to get more specific in numbers, one of Anthony's big focuses around this work was being transparent. And so, you know, if I click on this tab, you know, it breaks it down by county and specific population numbers. So you can get into the, it's not just a loose percentage, right? You can look into the actual numbers. This is my favorite like nerd table, you guys. I love this one because this is like disproportionality over time. And so I think this visual is incredibly helpful to say, okay, well, what happened in, you know, 2003? Did something happen when you see big drops or big increases, right? And it's interesting. We're not telling anyone why, because we don't know why, but it's nice to know that it happened so that then when you look at things like, well, that was the year the prosecutor's office lost some funding. And that was also the year we changed this law and this, right? Those were the three variables that year. At least it lets you see what happened, right? We're not saying which caused what, but or if there even is a causation, but it's just nice to be able to see that. Again, here we're in the race tab of the conviction data, and this is, again, same data, just flip-flopped. So what we have here are the 10 most, I think it's 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, most populous counties, and you can filter this and pull in different counties and do it however you want to do it. But it's just taken by county now, and so you can sort through by race, and you can see it what that does per county. So again, just another way to look at the same information over time. now if we move to sentencing, so now we've pulled out, there were the two piles of data in the last tabs. We've now pulled out the census data. So this is only the CFC data from here on out. And here we have sentencing information. Again, you can sort by county. You can sort here by offense. And this looks, the window right now is a little small, but if you blow it up, you can really pull out and parse out all sorts of different kinds of things here and really sort of get down. Like if you just want to look at drug offenses, things like that, you can do that here. You can sort by race, age, gender. Obviously, we're working within the parameters of how the data is collected, right? And that is sort of part of what the legislative team is working on is, well, can we add different categories in different spots? And if that's a requirement, then our data looks a lot better, right? Or at least it's a lot cleaner and it's a lot more defined, not that it looks better. So what we have here, again, 5 most populous counties, and what this number means, I want to explain this a little bit. So we have it as the average sentencing range percentage. What that means is if a sentencing range for a specific crime, let's say the sentencing range was 12 and a day to 14 months. So within the standard guidelines, that's what a judge has available. If they sentence if they're always sentencing to the 12 and a day, like the very bottom of that range, that would be that 0%. If they're always sentencing to 14 months, that would be that top end. So 50 is right in the middle of the range. So just to clarify, because 50 doesn't really have much of a meaning unless you're putting it in that context. So that's what we're looking at is within the sentencing range, are people going to a high end or a low end? Again, I'll just sort of different ways to look at this information. This next tab can be sorted by judge, is one way to do it. And so again, same information, just sort of flip-flopped. And now you can look and, if I was on the bench somewhere and I had peers, you can bookmark these. And so every time you would come, it would just be your sort of set list. And then this is, again, same info, but the tweak here is that what we're looking at is the seriousness level of the crime and the offender score of the crime, and see what happens there. I sort of describe this as like, well, you just kind of wonder, like, is there some implicit bias that happens where, offender score and seriousness level per the sentencing guidelines take into account the seriousness level of the crime and someone's prior criminal history, right? But is there some sort of unconscious bias that, like, as the numbers go up, right? Like as someone's offender score fundamentally just goes up, or as the seriousness level, do you see a tweak of maybe people are sentencing to the higher end just because of that, right? Even though that's incorporated in the guidelines already, are people tending to a higher end, or are they tending to a lower end, or does it change by race? Again, no answers to this, but it's just, those are the sort of things you kind of wonder about. So this just gives you the data, right? Again, here it all is. And then the last tab, again, mentioning Anthony's focus here on transparency, is this is where we can get into the case drill down. Now, and we can get into specific cause numbers. Now, this doesn't take you to a link. This doesn't link you to someone's court file or anything like that. It's just it's the cause number, right? In theory, yes, we know, like, somebody can pull this list and go search it and do this track down of all the information. But what we're not including here is offender name, birthday, any sort of PII for the offender, because we don't want one more spot where a person then has to go back and remove their name, yet another database sort of thing. But you can look at cause number because we really want, this is the example I tend to use for this, is I sat down with a friend on the bench in another county, and I was showing him this tool very, very early on, and we were pulling up his numbers, and he had a specific area, there was a specific race where his metric was higher than the others, and he's like, well, let's look at that. And so we dialed down into the case number, and once we got to it, he was like, oh yeah, I remember that exact guy, like the person that made my number look different. And he was like, career con man, 25 years of criminal history in multitude of states. He was like, I remember everything about that person, right? And so it was just like, yep, we're not trying to, do anything here, jazz hands anything away. But the ability to, in this tool, then go through that, it's reassuring that, that the data is here, and here's the information we have. This does scroll to the side. Oh yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump in
Please
here
do.
too, because this is one of the spots where having this drill down data, I think is going to be really exciting from what we're hearing for judges. And I know this is really exciting for me as a practitioner, because all of our judges are siloed and we keep hearing complaints about they don't know how, even though they are doing their best, they don't know if how they are sentencing, how that compares to the person in the next courtroom, much less a judge in a county across the state. And this is a way for them to get greater insight into how their decisions on the bench compare to others. And if they are trying to, I go into this assuming that all judges are trying for equity. So this helps them sort of check themselves and their thinking to be able to figure out, are they doing it? But we're not saying that we have identified all the data points useful to that. For instance, if I am going in front of a judge on a second-degree assault case, and I look at that judge's numbers and they differ considerably from judges in another court, I, as a lawyer, may want to go and pull information from those files so I can get a better sense of, well, what's going on with that judge's thinking? Is it something about the case or cases that were brought in front of them? Or is there an argument that, a particular judge, there either needs to be education, we need to talk about this more. So I have found that having this available is really going to be useful for the people in the system.
I'd also like to add that as far as the data points, as we work towards those data points, we did reach out to the University of Washington, and Catherine Rebecca gave us probably around 100 data points that they use. So, I mean, they're one of the top 10 research universities in the United States. So one of the things that we want to do ultimately with this database is to eliminate a lot of the need for 6-year studies at a university when we have the technology to do it instantly.
And one more point before I let Kate pick back up. What you are seeing right now is sort of judge-centric in a lot of ways. And that is because of the pool of data and the data points that we have started with. But we are keeping in mind that a judge is one of a number of actors throughout the system, whether it's police, prosecutors, defense lawyers, and they all have some impact on the ultimate result. And so we're keeping in mind as we build this out that we want to try and capture data points that makes all of those decisions more transparent and understandable.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because this is very, beginning. This is the one pile of data we have, right? And until we get these data share agreements with the nonprofit sort of set up, that's our pile we have. But we sort of have a plan of action for, talking to prosecutors' offices. We've been speaking with King County for months and months about this, and they were heavily involved throughout this process with respect to sharing their data, right? Like I don't want to say we understand because it makes it sound like we understand, but we are aware of all of the spots where this lives, right? And the grand scheme is that it would be great if this was more reflective of what I keep calling the life cycle of a matter, right? Like, what was the call out for? What was someone booked for? What was bail set? Like, all of those pieces. We recognize that sentencing is one part of this, right? But there's a tale to tell. We met with Judge Keenan, was it yesterday, 2 days ago? Yeah, I don't know what day it is anymore, you guys. I mean, come on, it's quarantine. But we met with Judge Keenan and, LFOs and the way that factors into this. Like, we've been having the hope is that we just add more and more data. And with respect to outside our state, we've had meetings with Measures for Justice because they've done a great amount of data collection, and they have, thoughts, and they've worked through getting data from various states. And so we've been in connection with them, along with some other agencies in California, with Ohio, and with Michigan, to sort of understand, their thoughts on how they share stuff, right? And what they share and who has access to it and all of that. So that's been part of our discussions as well. So that's the tool. Happy to answer questions. We're lucky enough to have Janika here, who's one of our data folks. And so she actually knows things, like I'm just like the lawyer that like yammers on. Kim and I are just like, this is great. And she's like, I have to do the hard work of the data stuff. So she's here if you guys have any questions as well. Yes, Judge Anderson, go ahead. You guys
so I have one question in the chat. Is this data just from Superior Court, or is it from all trial courts across the state?
It's just adult felony, so it's just superior courts right now. Yeah, the grand plan. We have had some discussions with like tribal courts that are interested. We've had discussions across the board, but yep, this is currently the superior court data that CFC had. So it's even more limited. You know, if they didn't have it, we don't have it right now.
Yeah, and we are hoping at some point to be able to sort of complete the life cycle of the felony case and then look to tribal cases and courts of limited jurisdiction for our misdemeanor cases. That is going to be an even bigger task because of the number of courts we have, the different codes. So we are looking forward to the experience that we get from working with felonies so that then we can tackle that bigger piece of the puzzle.
And there's also a comment in the chat just to talk about like the reentry from data and right, like the recidivism and all sorts of pieces of that. You guys, we fully like there are people that have info on like mortality, about foster care. Like there's just like my mind like can go down the path of like all the ways this could be used. But yeah, that's something we've definitely discussed.
And the ongoing partnership with Microsoft and the technology, we haven't even used the AI yet, but it's one of the things we've been discussing is the artificial intelligence to take the you know, like court documents with handwriting on it, sloppy handwriting, and then they can train the computers to be able to read it and sort the data and, you know, make it a lot easier to, you know, create a data collection system for, you know.
So I'll just jump in. I'm Terry Price from the Access to Justice Board. I spend a lot of time thinking about courts and their technology. And all I'm going to say is I am so blown away by this project. It is amazing. And my little part of the world has to do with these data sharing agreements. And so I will just follow up separately with you. I did notice on one of your subsequent tabs that you actually had Hispanic split out. And so it was interesting to me that it wasn't, you said it comes under other on some tabs, but then it showed up on another tab.
Yeah, I can clarify that for sure. So, and I'm sorry, I stopped sharing my screen because I wanted to see the chat and I can't do all those things. The convictions tab, because it's the census data and the CFC data, because the census limits it to other, that's where it's other. Once we pull out that census data and all we're looking at is the CFC data that lists out, lists out Hispanic, but Latinx, you know, that's where we have it popped back in. And we will absolutely be excited on data share stuff because, you know, Microsoft we have an open data project that's going on, and this project has actually been chosen within Microsoft to be one of the 20 open data sort of sharing projects they're taking on. So we do have some data share folks who are willing to help out, but like the more we can get, the better, because that can be a complicated space. And I'm just an employment lawyer, so.
And we are working on the launch. So once we get all these the data share agreements in place, we are working on the launch where it will be accessible to the public.
One of the things that your questions and that Kate's comments have highlighted is really the power of collaboration. And that's what this tool is showing. Not only from us in the legal world being able to collaborate with Microsoft, but also with amongst all of ourselves, because as we are doing these presentations, we are making connections with all of you and your ideas. And it was so exciting for us to have a meeting with Judge Keenan this week where he talked about LFOs, which we hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about, but he also talked about demographics such as people on SSI or disabled people. And these are things that we haven't thought of, and they're going to be so important to think of as we move forward. When we were presenting to another organization, Justice Gonzalez was present, and he has engaged us in a lot of conversation about the Latinx Hispanic data gap or data issues that we have. And so we're looking forward to talking with him as we work through these issues and try to figure out ways to make the data more reliable when it comes to that demographic. So we really welcome hearing from you. I want to encourage that.
And thank you all so much for having us. I want to be very conscious of your time because I had to run a board meeting on Wednesday that went like long and I was like losing my mind about it. So I want to just be very conscious of like the start and the end, but I'm happy to take questions or, please guide us with respect to your time.
Could you provide in case anyone want to follow up with you, could you provide in the chat your email or whoever will be the contact person that folks can follow up with? Thank you. All right. Okay, SP has a question. SP, go ahead.
Just like Terry, I am just thrilled that this project took place. And you said it took place in 4 days?
Yeah, we got the data pile on the third day. So like, it's, I came from governmental, like I came from a county prosecutor's office. So I know what my mind was about time. And then it's like, what, like 4 days later, what's happening? Like that speed is quite remarkable. But again, there's so much more to do. I mean, there's a lot more to do.
Amazing what you can do when the resources get pulled together for it, right? And obviously we need this across, in so many different ways in our legal system, and civil legal aid is another area, and the crossover between the impact for somebody with a felony record and how that impacts their life. Just getting a job or housing or what have you. So I'm looking forward to see how we can expand this so that it covers those 39 counties around criminal and civil law and how it impacts folks. And so thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. And I think the emails are in the chat. Those are good spots to start if you have any more questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we go to legislative update now. Antonio, is Antonio here?
I am here.
All right, Antonio, take it away. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rance. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Antonio Ginetta, Columbia Legal Services, back again just for a quick update on our legislative session. We are, oh, I just heard an echo. Okay, 47th day of session. Just under 2 months to go, and our last day is April 25th. It's always important to consider timing because so much of our all of our legislative work is really bound to certain deadlines. So until the 9th of March, we are now in floor session. This means that the House is trying to vote bills out of the House, Senate trying to vote bills off the Senate floor. You could tune into TVW at night and watch them work virtually. If you tuned in last night, you would have seen the Senate debate Senate Bill 5051 on police accountability, where the minority party put 40 amendments on that bill, and they were debating long into the night. I went to sleep around 11 and they were still going. That's the reality for the next couple of weeks for legislators. In terms of framework, before I talk about specific bills, also just the common theme is always money. The common theme is always money. You want to pass good policy, there's always a cost to it. So often a cost to it. So for example, House Bill 1412 is a bill that's trying to reform our legal financial obligation laws. We're really stuck on trying to reform the victim penalty assessment. Prosecutors are very opposed to some of the reforms we're planning there, and say that if we are successful, they're going to lose funding for their victim services. And so that is holding up the debate on the floor side for House Bill 1412. Senate Bill 5226, which addresses ending driver's license suspension simply for inability to pay a traffic infraction. A very important bill, but it has a money component to it. I mean, if you reduce the number of suspensions, that means you reduce the number of the reassessment fee, of the reapplication fees, and so you lose money there. And the locals are very concerned about losing money, and so would put up a fight. They don't oppose the policy, but it just costs money. If you want to resentence people, that means more court time. If you try to make a bill we helped to work on last year that made that struck out robbery 2 as one potential strike for 3 strikes. There's a bill trying to make that retroactive, but that will require resentencing, which costs money. There's actually 3 or 4 bills that have resentencing components, and we just heard the idea yesterday that the House is interested in passing them, but the way to address it is potentially create some sort of universal pool for the courts to draw from for resentencings that occur through legislation that's passed this year. So that's the first time I had heard of an effort to unify that, but that's being considered as well. And we tried to eliminate solitary confinement, but when you try to eliminate solitary confinement, it costs money because it means it may require more correctional officers. Even if trying to make Juneteenth a state holiday has a $7.5 million biennial budget note. So everything is right now, lots of conversations are happening about money. That includes the housing bill that is in rules right now, Senate Bill 5160, which has a right to counsel component. Now, if I remember, and I see some folks here who might be able to talk about it more, the right to counsel is for indigent folks is actually now subject to availability of funds. So there's a right, but it's subject to funds, and then it needs to be prioritized in terms of geographic needs. So that's been limited somewhat, but that bill's just got pulled from rules yesterday, and I expect it's going to get debated on the floor. There are really 2 major housing bills that are really taking up a lot of space, the 5160 on the Senate side and then 1236 on the House side. That's a just cause bill. Sponsored by Senator Macri. And right now we're just trying to figure out if we have enough votes for it to get voted out on the floor. It will involve probably a late night or a lot of amendments and a lot of opposition from the minority side who doesn't believe in the approach of just cause. At Columbia Legal, we're actually working on a smaller bill, House Bill 1300, which addresses improving protections for tenants when it comes to damage claims by landlords. But that bill is just held up by the conversations happening around 5160 and 1236. So we're very much waiting our turn. A lot of the conversations now, a lot of what's happening now is about time management and what you can get passed out before the 9th. I mentioned the LFO bill. Like I said, we've got debates going on there. There's good news on House Bill 1072, which is the bill that addresses the current immigrant restrictions under the Oklahoma statute. That bill is now through the House and got actually scheduled for March 4th next week in Senate Law and Justice. So it's moving quickly, which is really helpful. Let me think. The consumer bill we're working on that creates automatic self-executing bank account garnishment protections. We could potentially become the 4th state in the country to actually create this protection. So there's no need when you're getting your bank account garnished to have to fill out an exemption form. You get a certain amount automatically protected. It's not a big amount. It's only about $500 or $1,000 depending on the situation, but it's something. That bill got pulled to the floor from rules, so we're feeling good about that as well. I think it's important to, I want to flag, this legislature, I mean, there is some systemic work happening. We passed a bill out of the House that bans private for-profit detention in the state. The House passed a bill restoring the right to vote to people who are out of prison, out of total confinement. And both of those bills were passed with bipartisan support. We got 20 Republicans to support the private for-profit detention ban bill. And I think it's important to recognize that these are not partisan issues. We're having good partisan support on them. Some we're not, some we are, but it's important to always recognize them. So I feel like right now we are just, a lot of us folks are looking to see what gets pulled to the floor from rules, what's going to get debated by the 9th and what's going to get left behind. It's a stressful time, but things are moving, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Question for Antonio. All right. Michael, do you have, oh, no, sorry. Any question for Antonio? Okay, thank you, Antonio. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for your presentation. Now we go to Will. Will, EJC update.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And thanks, Antonio. Obviously, there's lots of really exciting policy stuff going on right now where a lot of the focus is. As everybody knows, the EJC is focused on the budget side. And to that effect, we had our virtual lobby days this month, which many of you participated in, and thanks to everybody who did. We've had 56 virtual meetings so far, with maybe some more to come. Really positive response for the most part from legislators. We're fortunate that, again, the budget request for an $11 million investment to continue the COVID response investments appears to have bipartisan support. The budget development process is happening with staff and members sort of simultaneously with the policy efforts, but they're turning their attention to that soon. I would say that we're optimistic that the House and Senate Democratic budget proposals will fully fund the $11 million request. Just as an FYI, the Senate Republican proposal does not include any of it, and the House Republican proposal includes about half of it, 5.2 million. I know Jim will get more into the funding picture in a minute. But from our end, we're working on follow-ups after our meetings. We're working with Representative Stonier from Clark County and Representative Rammel from sort of Skagit-Whatcom County on a sign-on letter in support of the funding request that's circulating in the House Democratic Caucus this week. So hopefully that'll be helpful, and special thanks to the folks in Clark and Skagit-Whatcom who help with those connections. And I think the most helpful thing for this group to do would be, once we get toward the time where the House and Senate budget committees are having budget hearings, I'll be reaching out and encouraging people to sign in and support the full budget request and or submit written comments. The EJC will definitely be doing that. I think that's about it. If anybody has any other questions about our virtual lobby days, I'm happy to answer them, or I'd like to turn it over to our chair, Kirsten, who has an update too.
Hey folks, any questions for Will before I start? Okay, great. It was, I think, a good experience to do lobby day virtually, and a lot of folks got to participate, and it was great because Will just did, of course, a wonderful job organizing it and getting all of those Zoom meetings together, and was able to be in almost every call. So there was a wonderful consistency with information to legislators that was great. So thanks to Will for that. There is a letter in your board packet to appoint a new chair, the chair-elect for the Equal Justice Coalition, Kara Masters. I think probably most folks on this call in this meeting know her. She's got a long history with the Alliance, has just finished her term with the Legal Foundation, and has had lots of other experience and interactions. And so I present her to the board for approval as the incoming EJC chair-elect.
All right. Okay. Sal, you want to make a motion?
Yes, I will move that the board appoint Kara Masters to the 2-year term of EJC chair. Enthusiastically, I will make this motion.
Second, any second? SP, second. Okay, all in favor, can I see a thumbs up? All right, let me make sure I capture everyone. Okay, unanimously approved. Judge Keenan, thank you. Unanimously approved by the board. All right. All right, we move on to funding report. Is Jim available? Jim is going to let me know if and when he's available, or me and Diana.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I couldn't text you. I did text Bonnie.
Okay, go ahead, Jim. We will take you out of town because you have other tasks you need to do with the legislators.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm sorry I was late to the meeting. The legislature does call, as Antonio indicated earlier. I'll talk about a couple of things. One, Will has pretty well covered the issue about the basic OCLA funding request. The goal is to continue. The pandemic doesn't end on June 30th, by the way, just in case anybody thought it did. And so we've been asking the legislature to continue the emergency pandemic legal aid program that we stood up over the course of the last 7 months. I'm thrilled to report to you that on the basis of data through January 31st of this year, just in those 7 months, COVID-19 related legal assistance was provided to 12,270 people statewide. Really terrific effort on the part of our providers. And that's even despite really bad glitches at the Employment Security Department and the gumming up of the unemployment claimant system, as well as the continuation of the eviction moratorium. More than 6,700 people presenting eviction-related problems or rental housing-related problems also received assistance during that period of time. We are getting very good traction. People get that they need to continue this effort. Budget writers are very pleased to be informed that a portion of it already would be eligible for federally funded support through the Consolidated Budget Act that passed on December 27th and the state share of funding there. But more importantly, the American Rescue Plan that the House of Representatives and Congress will pass today. Budget hearings are actually going on as we speak. That will provide substantial economic assistance to the state of Washington and local jurisdictions to address efforts to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, the entirety of our program is an effort to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 program. So it could be entirely funded with federal emergency funds. And those, the expenditure authority, unlike the CARES Act, the expenditure authority of that funding goes out to 2025. So we've advised budget writers and budget writing staff that they should and can look to the federal relief package as a source for funding if they cannot find state general funds sufficient to fund it. Happy to answer any questions on that part of the funding. Okay, moving on. There are two major bills that affect the Office of Civil Legal Aid and carry very big price tags. The first bill is the bill that Antonio referenced, Second Substitute Senate Bill 5160, which would create a right to court-appointed counsel for tenants in unlawful detainer cases. Interestingly enough, the bill has been extraordinarily controversial. In the Senate Ways and Means Committee, just to keep the bill alive, many of the tenant protections in that bill had to be stripped. But the one protection that did not get stripped was right to counsel. And in fact, a Republican member of the committee, Senator Gildon, submitted a striking amendment to the bill, which a striking amendment basically removes everything after the title and substitutes an entirely new bill. Senator Gildon's striking amendment had 3 sections, 2 of which implemented a statewide right to counsel for tenants. So that was quite a surprise to a number of us. That bill is going to the floor in the Senate. It will continue to be a subject of substantial discussion and negotiation. We've been invited to meet with the speaker on Monday, along with a number of other folks from the tenant advocacy community to discuss this and other provisions of that bill. I know the speaker's also meeting today with members of the rental housing industry. Her goal is to get a bill that can work and can secure sufficient bipartisan support if possible to move out. The Implementation challenges that we would face are significant. The implementation challenges that our providers would face are significant. OCLA has recruited a very small technical advisory work group to help us develop an implementation plan, scope out kind of core values, core components, and timelines. And we have good representation from the Housing Justice Project community, from NJP, from the Superior Court Judges Association, and the tenant advocacy community. And our work on that will commence on as soon as the Senate passes the bill, which we anticipate will happen shortly. The cost of the bill is not cheap. It's just the year one cost itself is about $10.7 million, 10.7, 10.8. We have advised the budget writers and the bill sponsors that, like our general appropriation, this would be entirely eligible for funding with COVID relief funds that Congress will make available. So that makes the chances of passage significantly greater than if we had to pull that kind of money out of, $22, $23 million a biennium out of the state general fund. The other bill that is also of major significance is House Bill 1219. That bill has passed the Appropriations Committee. It would expand and require a phased-in right to counsel for children in dependency and termination cases. Children and youth who are 8 years and older would automatically be assigned a state-funded attorney. The bill would substantially expand the children's representation program at the Office of Civil Legal Aid, and we would begin the process according to the implementation schedule established in the bill, which over the course of 6 years would result in full statewide coverage. This is legislation that was promoted and has been promoted by the youth associated with and youth participants with the Mockingbird Society, a statewide youth advocacy and child welfare focused organization. The particular team that developed this proposal are a group of youth from the Mockingbird's Yakima chapter, extraordinary young people to work with. We're just thrilled to be able to work with them. And we are actually pleasantly surprised that this bill continues to live, although it is subject to a null and void clause, which means that if funding isn't appropriated, the bill is null and void and has no legal effect. So those are the three areas that I thought I'd report on. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about any of them.
Any question for James? Any question or comments? All right. Then we go to, I still don't see Cesar. Am I missing Cesar? Is he on
Hey, Francis.
page? Yeah.
Caitlin had to drop off at 11. She sends her apologies. She asked me to give the quick LFW update. I could also probably give a quick federal update for Cesar if he's not here.
If you could do that, I will appreciate that. Go ahead.
Sure. So on the federal side, the EJC always does congressional outreach in April, in coordination with the American Bar Association in support of the Legal Services Corporation funding request. They, as everybody knows, provide funding to NJP and providers across the country. We are planning to do that again virtually this year. The Legal Services Corporation request is going to be very large, over $1 billion, which is more than twice as much as the agency is currently funded for. So that's exciting. I will note that the LSC asked for $350 to $500 million in additional funding in the American Rescue Act that the House is likely to pass today, and that's not in there. So they're not going to be included in the COVID relief package like they were in the CARES Act at a much smaller number, but there is a possibility that their budget request could be a lot higher this year in response to the needs. So we're gearing up for our advocacy at the federal level around that, which will take place in April. And I'd be happy to report more about that as we get closer. And then the LFW update that Caitlin wanted me to pass along was mostly just two things. One, that LFW is wrapping up its role in the Washington Immigrant Relief Fund that Caitlin, I know, has updated the group about extensively. Payments have been completed for the first and second rounds, which distributed over $60 million in direct relief payments to people who are ineligible for the federal stimulus or unemployment benefits because of their immigration status. So that's been a huge effort that I will congratulate other people who work at LFW on for their huge investment of time in getting that done. And it sounds like if that fund is continued through state or legislative action, then that role would be possibly handed over to the state and our other community partners, and LFW sort of like wrapping up our role in that. We did include a full report on how the first round of payments went that was linked in our newsletter that went out yesterday. If you're interested in more information there, or you can just contact me and I'm happy to send you the report as well. And then the other thing is that our next round of race equity grants are going to be available soon. The deadline for that is April 15th. And if anyone has any more questions about that, I don't know if Emily's still on the call, but we'd obviously be happy to answer those. And I think that was it for the LFW updates. I know Melinda's here for some other funding updates.
Yeah, yes. Any comments for Will on federal and LFW? In the absence of that, Melinda, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Good morning, everybody. The virtual Goldmark event, with a lot of your help, broke some records. We had more than 1,000 people in attendance, and we raised more than $400,000 for legal aid. So thanks to everybody who participated in that. And because the event was totally virtual this year, we produced a whole bunch of separate videos, which we're really happy to share in any way with folks, including the Supreme Court's letter, call to action, and the 2 amazing client stories with the Unemployment Law Project and the Columbia Legal Services story about the Martinez case. So we have access to those on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and get in touch with me or Will if you're interested in accessing those. And we really appreciate the folks who made some videos for that in support of the foundation's work. Francis, I know you did one of those. It was really terrific. So we look forward to using those throughout the year at different events. We're planning virtual fundraising and educational events for the remainder of 2021 at this point, unless something changes. But we've also, I think, like a lot of providers, have experienced larger audiences and less cost. So it's a good combination. But we do look forward to getting back together in person as soon as we can. And let me back up for 1 second. We are going to do a short survey to everybody who attended the Goldmark about the virtual event as we think about next February, which is probably going to be a time that we can gather. So we want to gauge people's interests in whether we should do that or whether there's some sort of a hybrid event that we could have. So we'll look forward to your input on that. With the successful completion of Reach 20, the Endowment for Equal Justice is now embarking on a strategic planning process. And as part of that, we'll be doing one-on-one interviews and focus groups with different stakeholders in the ATJ community. And we look forward to talking with some of you about that. And that should be completed in the fall when we'll do a report out. And that's it. Thank you. I look forward, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Question for Melinda. I feel bad that Sal raised more money than me, but next year I'm going to beat him in this game.
Okay,
right.
That's what we like. A little competition. And then there's always Whatcom County with Kirsten Barrett, and they're always amazing.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on. In the absence of any question for Melinda, we're going to move on to updates and announcements. Anyone with updates and announcements? All right. I want to remind everyone, Disco meets first Tuesday of the month at between 3:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. The next meeting is going to be on March 2nd. The Technology Committee meeting is third Tuesday of every other month at 12 p.m., between 12 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. The next meeting is April 20, and the Rules Committee meets third Tuesday every other month at between 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. The next meeting is March 16. Judge Keenan, is that correct? March 16?
For which committee, Mr. Francis?
Rules. You are in so many committees now.
Yeah, hold on. Let me look at my calendar. That is correct.
All right. Bonnie and Diana, are there any other thing that I left out that we wanted to bring to the notice of everyone?
I'll just share that today is February 26th, which is the deadline to submit your ATJ conference proposal. So I'm sure all of you have one that you may have already submitted or yet to submit, but today's the deadline.
Yeah, we should have been bringing that up. Well, I think we brought it up at the last meeting to remind people, but if you need an extension or your organization need an extension, please write to Junior and Vanessa and let them know if you need an extension. Thank you, everyone. I think this is it. We'll see you next month. Thank you for attending this month meeting. Bye-bye.